Hello. Welcome to my art form.
It's time for Post-Orthodoxy, a show about changing our minds.
Yeah, baby.
With your hosts, Dark and Ainsley Sevier.
Maybe what they believe about reality isn't all of reality.
What?
I know, right?
We're on a mission to have a better time with more people more often.
The question is, how do you get there?
Post-Orthodoxy explores strongly held beliefs, how those belief systems divide or connect people, and what might be found beyond those reality bubbles.
Keep calm. Don't lose your head.
I've got a piece of chocolate here with me because I got anxiety about doing this.
Welcome to this neighborhood, neighbor.
All right.
What?
I was trying to be smooth.
Take two.
Hi.
Hello there.
We're live. Welcome to Post-Orthodoxy. This is the semi-regular shout out to all the people that donated money and equipment to the studio so that we could provide this space for conversations for you guys. We had a really fun time this past week recording Sam DeBree's first episode of his horror podcast, Can We Get a Monster on Set?
Yes.
And I'll be editing it soon.
Yeah.
But
It's in the
to-do bay.
The to-do bay.
Editing bay. Yes, the massive collection of to-do lists that I have. But I'm really excited because it was really funny and informative, and I think you guys are going to like Sam's show. And I couldn't be more honored to have Can We Get a Monster on Set as the first podcast being produced out of Sevier Studios.
The first post-orthodoxy show. I don't know.
Yeah. As in, like, being recorded after Post-Orthodoxy?
In addition to, I guess.
Yes. That's true.
We do like to do a disclaimer at the beginning of the show. You have to forgive me. I have a head cold.
Poor dear.
So I'm just going to be a little bit...
He's going to sound less than regal.
and mildly cranky.
Yeah. Been really tragical all afternoon.
We do a content warning and a viewer discretion at the beginning of the show because some people get upset by new information.
It's true. It's a primal thing. If you encounter something that you don't understand, the primal animal response is, I might be unsafe because I don't know what this is.
I'm going to run or I'm going to fight you.
Yeah.
So
that's okay.
The name of the show is Post-Orthodoxy. We're dealing with things that are outside of strongly held beliefs, fundamentalisms, status quos, orthodoxies,
dogmas,
and so on and so forth. So we like to poke around on the fringes a little bit.
It's true. We like to talk about all the things you're not supposed to talk about. And we have an enjoyment of doing that because each of us in our own way had to start talking about the things you're not supposed to talk about in order to become captains of our own ship brains.
Right.
Ship.
Yes. P.
Ship
We're
brains.
not on the radio. It's fine. You could say either one.
Shit brains.
We are, I think we like to call ourselves social extremophiles. We're a little outside the...
It's a good term for it.
The regular old
for instance, we live in a town with a massive, mile-deep, toxic waste lake, and they have recently found little things living in it.
Extremophiles.
Microbes that enjoy extreme environments and wouldn't be happy living in a beautifully balanced, clean creek.
Right, so we are developing our trauma superpowers, transmuting in a sort of Japanese wabi-sabi style. The ding is not damage, but character. So we're working around some tropes in the culture a lot of the time. And so I think it's become, in a hyper-partisan age, more and more people are ready to fight you if you don't agree with them. And you may not agree with us, but you don't have to fight us, but we're willing to have a conversation if you want.
Yeah.
The general idea is being post-orthodox or exploring ideas outside of the consensus or the status quo does not mean we necessarily are condemning those ideas or endorsing those ideas, but we're exploring territories outside of the commonplace. So some people say, oh, they talked about the thing, therefore they're bad guys. We're not endorsing necessarily a lot of the things. We're just exploring. So The opinions and views expressed by Dark and Ainsley on this show may not be the opinions and views of either future or past Dark and Ainsley. So hopefully, if we're doing this right, we will disagree with ourselves
in the future.
Because
that's what learning is.
Because we will have grown and known more things.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's our generalized disclaimer.
If
you're comfortable with that, hang out.
Hang out. If you know something more than we know, please share it in the comments. In fact, for those of you that are already tuning in, please leave a chat. Let us know where you're listening from. You can tune in on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, whichever platform you prefer right now. Eventually, we'll be able to branch out into the platforms that only let you broadcast in a profile. Right now, we can only do platforms that let you broadcast in a landscape. So, although I did just find this week in my ongoing research and development of this studio, you can live stream to Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube and Mixcloud at the same time.
Oh, really?
So that's kind of cool. We could be live streaming the raw version of the show to Mixcloud. I don't know if we want to do that, but I guess for people who only want to hear the audio, that would be a much less bandwidth-sucking way of tuning in.
Yeah, this is a live stream show. This is not just a super slick pre-recorded podcast. We do this live stream because we are, like raccoon with our hands under the water, messing around in some murky stuff. Sometimes we come across things that we would like to have some feedback on, and maybe we haven't been able to find alternative views. So we do it live because we know there are people in the world who are smarter than us, and hopefully some of them tune in and can help us refine our research, refine our information as we go. That's the whole point of the live show, is for people to call us out on bullshit when they see it.
Yes.
And correct our course when we might be heading for the iceberg. So not to put too much responsibility on it. That's what we're working towards.
We're creating an outpost in the Borderlands. We want people to be able to participate and learn and share information with us that they've learned on their travels. And hopefully some of the things that we've learned on our travels will be helpful for people as well.
What are we talking about today?
Money. Finance.
Do we want to start with finance?
Currency. That's the main topic.
That's the main topic.
The main topic today is some basic... Dark is just a wealth of information of things that I did not learn growing up, not through any fault of my homeschool mother, but just because most people don't learn about the Federal Reserve or the petrodollar in school.
Yeah, I've spent some time out in the Borderlands.
Yeah. So I'm going to be picking your brain a little bit about that, and you're going to pick my brain a little bit about the tiny, mild amount of information that I've learned about cryptocurrency, investing for the poverty class. And then hopefully we'll have some folks tuning in. We already have Damon Taylor tuning in from the Atlanta area. Yep. He's going to be our guest on Thursday. He's going back through the archives. He's going to listen to Mark French's show.
Oh, yes.
And address the points that Mark French was bringing up.
When we just touched on...
We just were mentioning what we were going to be talking about in the future, and Mark French was like, psh, crypto. And no diss to Mark French, because that's a lot of people's opinions about crypto right now. And Damon's been just researching the ever-living shit out of cryptocurrency, so he's the real expert in this case, although he is not a financial advisor, blah, 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 disclaimer. But I'm looking forward to picking his brain on Thursday. And then next week we're going to be going into the history of the U.S. drug war, and our guest is a cannabis chef.
Right.
Next Thursday.
So before we get into the
main
topic, I went down a rabbit hole today, so I didn't do all the research that I was planning on doing on the main topic, because I got sidebarred with some stuff that I found fairly interesting.
We like to update you all on various threads going in the country right now, such as the ongoing series that we did on the Colonial Pipeline for a while.
Right. So this show is in our home studio because we were banned from the local radio station for ranging around outside of the consensus views.
For sharing and discussing data.
Outside of the consensus, basically. So
about coronavirus.
About
SARS-CoV-2, because there are a lot of coronaviruses.
Or as I like to say, about the pandemic narrative.
Yeah.
There's a narrative that is crafted by media sources.
And there's a lot of data around SARS-CoV-2.
And there's a lot of data that doesn't fit into the narrative. There's a lot of data that is outside that narrative that I find interesting, but I don't want to be I consider myself a conspiracy analyst instead of a conspiracy theorist. And the conspiracy theories going around that I've been getting a lot of whiffs in my conspiracy spidey sense via the internet is this notion of, I saw a thread where somebody was talking about if you have been vaccinated, you're not allowed in this space. So it's the opposite of if you haven't been vaccinated, you can't come in. And so I was like, well, that's a kind of a flip of the story.
Right.
So the idea behind this banning of people who have been vaccinated to enter into spaces is this notion of vaccine shedding. And I found this really interesting because in the beginning of the pandemic narrative, the idea was that the virus, at least it was sold, that it was the potential for harm and death in people who are not normally in the range of the normal flu season was going to be greater than it actually turned out to be. And that's data. You can go to CDC. You can research that. We can fight about that on another show. Lots of people died. A lot of people are suffering. I have a friend of mine right now suffering from COVID-19.
Yes.
So we're not making fun of this. We're not making light of this. It's just a matter of putting things into context. So the idea was that if there was paranoia because of lack of good information around mask policy. We talked a lot about how the mask policy was counterproductive because you can't shame people into doing things in a hyper-partisan country. It's a losing
divisive.
strategy.
It's very divisive.
So suddenly you could tell if somebody was of one party or another party by their attitude around a medical device. So the idea was that if you didn't wear a mask, you were dangerous and you should stay away from me, and people would literally cross the street if they saw you walking down the street without a mask. Now, there are people who are anxious about you having had a vaccine because of this idea of vaccine shedding. So I wanted to
viral shedding. Vaccines are not supposed to shed. The definition of the vaccine is one of the several things that the medical and scientific and political community at large has changed over the last year and a half. As part of the pandemic narrative, vaccines, by definition, must not shed viral particles.
Well, that's
and yet the treatments being given for COVID-19 over the last year do shed. Some of them. Some of the CDC. That's why the CDC said that even if you've been vaccinated, you should for a while there was a window where even if you've been vaccinated, people were told that they should continue to wear masks because, and this is from the CDC's pamphlets, you could still get someone sick by virally shedding vaccine particles. Much like if you were carrying actual SARS-CoV-2 around in you, but not having COVID-19 symptoms, you could be shedding SARS-CoV-2, so you should not go visit people with immunocompromised systems until safer times. But the CDC pamphlets itself were saying even people who are vaccinated should continue to wear masks. That's where we first started talking about viral shedding. Vaccines, by definition, should not be virally shedding.
Okay, so that I have not found today, the part about the vaccine shedding. What I am going to share in the comments in the Facebook, or in the Facebook comments, is a link to an article I found from November last year. And we need to have a repeater who can help share. I guess I could also do this in the YouTube comments. It would give us more traffic. There's a link to an article, statnews.com, the story of RNA, how a once dismissed idea became the leading technology in the COVID vaccine race.
And this is the mRNA?
Yes, mRNA. So this link is a fascinating story from Science Journal magazine around medicine and business.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the thing really interesting. The history of mRNA, where it came from, the lady who invented it, how Moderna came about.
Moderna, the company?
The company came about and positioned themselves to be the big winners in the race for the vaccine. It's too much to get into on this show, but I wanted to share this story because I think if anybody's interested in what's being put into our bodies, it's a good idea to sort of, I want to know what's going on with the mRNA vaccine. So that's a really interesting story. It came out from November. That's before people were getting the vaccine. So this is the build-up to the vaccine being rolled out.
Distributed.
By Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Moderna, and actually a few other ones. The thing that I found interesting, looking for information on vaccine shedding, or the shedding of the virus after you've had the vaccine, I came across this thing called passive inhaled RNA vaccination, which I thought maybe that's what people are talking about. Maybe if you're exhaling, So I'm going to share this link too. I thought that was the idea, is that maybe people thought that once you have the vaccine, you're gonna exhale spike proteins and give the virus that way. I don't think that's what this paper is saying. It's done by a couple of Chinese guys. From researchgate.net. It's a paper for it's a website for unpublished research papers.
If you heard that it was a research paper by Chinese people and part of your brain went, then your amygdala has been hijacked and you are not able to have a fully integrated intellectual response to the idea of Chinese scientists, because some part of you thinks that probably China is bad.
Okay, so that led me down a rabbit hole.
That's something you can look at and recover from, though.
And this is something we're going to be covering a little bit as we go down the road. But the idea of the passive inhaled RNA vaccination led me to, this is the rabbit holes that I go down, led me to this, the difference between, where is it now? The difference between active immunity and passive immunity. So active immunity is where Ainsley got the SARS-CoV-2 virus. She tested positive in a test.
Yeah. I started developing illness symptoms, cold flu symptoms.
Lost your sense of smell.
And because I was working on a film job at the time, I was required to go and get tested and see what was going on. And I had a PCR test and a PCR test and a rapid test from one clinic and a rapid test from another clinic, and all of those tests came back positive for SARS-CoV-2 being present in my system.
Right. So that's what happened. So that.
You might save your voice a little bit if you just imagine there's a baby in the room.
Right. So I'm going to do another link here. This is from health.com. There could be two types of immunity for COVID-19. Here's what you need to know about both. And there's a nice little 1-minute video that explains the difference between passive immunity and active immunity. So you got sick. You had kind of like what I had. The symptoms were like what I have right now, which is like head cold. I can still smell things.
I was really congested, but I could breathe perfectly fine. Yeah. So I just had tons of headache pressure from all the snot in my sinuses, and I couldn't smell. Things didn't taste right. I did lose my sense of smell, but not to the extent that it didn't make me want to eat things. I lost sort of if you smell and taste are a spectrum, I lost the nuttiness zone. So coffee did not taste right. It was not the right kind of nutty. And this truffle popcorn that I really like was kind of my last barometer of when I knew that I was truly, my smeller was back.
Okay. So COVID-19. She got sick. She got better. Mm-hmm. That's how you get active immunity. Right.
I now have antibodies. Blah, blah, blah,
Your system created the antibodies. And so according to this health.com video and other places that I looked up, that kind of immunity, the active immunity, gives you immunity to the virus for a longer period of time, possibly for a lifetime, depending on the virus or the disease. Passive immunity comes from a vaccine, and it is a temporary immunity that can last weeks to months. Mm-hmm. And the difference between active immunity and passive immunity is that passive immunity is like when you have the flu season, and there are people at risk for getting the flu who might have fatal implications for getting the flu. People with comorbidities, people who are very old. So that's why there is this flu vaccine that comes at the beginning of flu season, because it only lasts for a short period of time. And so it only gives you immunity for a short period of time versus a young, healthy person getting the flu virus may or may not get sick.
Yeah.
And then develops the antibodies, makes them stronger, and has a longer spanning immunity than somebody who got the passive immunity. And the way I understand it, active immunity is how things have worked through history.
Mm-hmm.
Passive immunity comes from vaccines, which are used to stop a train coming down the tracks that could negatively affect large amounts of people.
Right.
So anyway, I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. The original definition of a pandemic is a widespread, highly contagious illness that disproportionately affects young and healthy.
They took the disproportionately part off.
Yeah, they took that part off.
Who's they? WHO.
The WHO redefined what a pandemic is. It used to say, and you can find this on the Internet database, there's the Internet Archive. You can look at older versions of websites on the Internet Archive and see what it looked like in 2015. The original definition of a pandemic for the last long period of time has been a highly contagious disease that's widespread that disproportionately affects the young and healthy. It's understood in a global perspective, it's understood that any time a new disease comes out, it's going to affect people who are already ill or who are old and frail or who are young and frail. Like from a medical, biological, scientific perspective, that's understood. We're not talking about people's individual loved ones dying or like the emotional impact that those deaths have. But from a biological and scientific, long-term global perspective, before SARS-CoV-2 and this pandemic, the definition of pandemic was understood to be illness that disproportionately affects the young and healthy.
So that's the idea of
the breeding stock.
Passive immunity versus active immunity.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a normal, healthy immune system encounters these things and protects the individual from it. I'm looking for anybody who knows more than us or knows more than what I found to tell us.
I'll play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay, to tell us why we are giving the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine to 12-year-olds. Because that's where they need, for a healthy immune system, for a longer immunity, for a stronger immunity, to encounter the SARS-CoV-2 because they're not at risk of really having...
Of dying.
Or
having long-term side effects.
So for a better immune system, it seems to me, they should have the active immunity through being exposed to the virus and building their immune system. And that's why I find it... I would like to know the answer to why they're encouraging young, healthy 12-year-olds to get the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine. Do you want to be devil's advocate on that?
Well... if this was really the zombie apocalypse, if SARS-CoV-2, the virus, truly caused so much illness, COVID-19. The virus is SARS-CoV-2. We've already had a couple of different SARS viral epidemics and pandemics over recent recorded history, last few hundred years. So SARS-CoV-2 is a new version of this coronavirus. There are lots of coronaviruses. Coronaviruses make up a large portion of the kinds of viruses that cause the common cold. So this coronavirus, this new one, SARS-CoV-2, and the accompanying illness, COVID-19, if this virus was causing horrific illness and death amongst the youth, we should absolutely be vaccinating 12-year-olds.
Yeah, but it's not doing that.
But it's not doing that. But the story is still such that this is the literal zombie apocalypse, and the only way the planet will be safe is if we all get vaccinated.
So that's something I went down the rabbit hole on today, and I'd like to start dropping little more tidbits along
we
that
kind of stayed away
thought.
from it for a while.
Yeah, I think it's time to go back in because, for me, anyway, because I stopped researching when we stopped doing the show where we were talking about that subject.
Yeah, we kind of put it on hiatus for a while just because it's so divisive, and especially leading up to the election, it was extra traumatic for people to talk about anything. I should say it was extra traumatic for my blue friends.
How to lose all your friends.
Yeah. It was extra traumatic for my blue team friends to talk about anything that didn't match the blue team version of the pandemic narrative. So I'm looking at
or even to do like to talk about this idea of shedding because of the vaccine, like to try to look at that from not from a perspective to validate what I'm looking for. It has the risk of alienating people on the blue team and the red team. Because some people have just, oh my God, if you get the vaccine, you're going to be shedding it. We're all going to be, Bill Gates zombies or something. Like, it's more than a black and white issue.
We would like to have conversations about these sorts of really difficult subjects without alienating people.
Right. So we have to dance around a lot.
So I'm looking at ncov2019.live, which is a link that I shared in the comments, and I'll share it again. This was one of the first websites that Dark and I started following for data back last, March, April, May, June, when we were still looking at the deaths and being like, this is probably the zombie apocalypse. Everybody should stay home. Make sure we don't flood the hospitals. That was our perspective, and it's on record. And grr. And then the more grr KBMF, the more we looked at the data, and the more that we brought in sources from all over the world who were talking about the numbers, how many people are dying per million. How many people are dying per 100,000?
Right.
Which demographics of people are dying? Which demographics of people are experiencing long-term side effects? Is it the quote-unquote biological big picture breeding stock? Is it the youth? Is it the next generation? It's not. It's not the youth, and it's not the breeding stock. And I'm using really callous terms because I'm very convicted about how much suffering has been caused over the last year. That's my motivation for wanting to continue studying this and for stepping back into it really gradually. There's been a lot of suffering. People have lost their homes. Family businesses have been destroyed. People have had massive mental health plummets and physical health plummets. People, like you've heard the stories, potentially, or maybe you're in a bubble where you haven't heard about all the suffering. But the suffering is really convicting for me. And so I'm going to use callous terms. Like, we should not be locking down the entire planet for a year and vaccinating 12-year-olds unless this disease is actually killing the primary demographic that keeps the planet moving forward, which is the breeding stock and the youth. And I'm sorry to say it in such rude terms. But so one thing that's been kind of bothering me is I'm looking at ncov2019.live. There have been 177 million confirmed COVID-19 cases total globally. 177 million out of 8 billion. 177 million humans out of, so that's out of 8 billion. So that's what is that? A quarter? Not even a quarter.
A quarter of a percent? What?
So 177 out of 8 billion. No, that's that's not even a quarter of 1 million. That's not even a quarter of a million. A billion, sorry. So 1 billion. These are massive numbers. This is why these scare tactics have been so effective, because we can't conceptualize of these massive numbers. 1 billion is 100 millions.
Yeah.
1 billion people is 10 groups of 100 million people.
Yeah.
And we've had 177 million. So not even 2 groups of 100 million people out of 1 billion out of 8 billion on the planet have even tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 over the last 2 years.
So excess death. You can go to excess death.
But then compared to that, we've vaccinated 1.5 billion people.
So that gives them passive immunity.
Yeah, which they probably already had because of how many people experienced SARS-CoV-2 passing through their immune system but never experiencing illness. Anyway.
By the way, I found a link from the Nebraska Medicine website that says shedding cannot happen without a live vaccine. So they say the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, are not live vaccines and do not replicate. The Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca vaccines are considered live vaccines because they both contain adenovirus. Again, they do not contain the coronavirus. But the adenovirus in both Johnson & Johnson and the AstraZeneca vaccines can't replicate. So there's no way they can shed. Anyway, that's coming from the Nebraska Medicine
Okay, so they can't shed because they don't have SARS-CoV-2 in them.
Right. Well, they don't have a live virus in them. That's what they're saying. And
Okay.
and those aren't even old school vaccines. They're the mRNA stuff. So
Right, mRNA gene therapy.
So I don't know what people are talking about the shedding. Are they talking about spike proteins are being shed?
I'm not sure. I think it would. I mean, this is the thing is we've put off researching all the vaccines because we kind of didn't want to know for a while, which is against post-orthodoxy policy. But we got pretty burned. We got pretty burned
There's
by
a lot of stuff to talk about
by our friends here in town, and there were plenty of other things to talk about for a while. But we're going to have to go in and look at each of the vaccines on offer and go to the VAERS Institute and look at the vaccine injuries being listed for each of those vaccines and see if that data justifies further insight into whether these vaccines are doing more good than harm.
So that article that I shared from STAT, that is exclusive biopharma health policy and life science analysis. That's the byline of the website, statnews.com. The special report, the story of mRNA, how a once dismissed idea became a leading technology in the COVID vaccine race. I put it in the comments, and I recommend reading it if you want to know what's going on with the mRNA, because we're going to be hearing more about that, because this is not just something they have developed for coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
This is something where they think they can make
they can fabricate stem cells.
Can fabricate stem cells,
which would be amazing.
Basically, hack your genes to make anything they want your genes to make, which
would be great
is
if I was
bewildering.
involved in that choice.
So it follows the science, but it also follows the money.
Yeah.
The amount of money that's being generated by our government throwing money into research, that then these two private companies, government funds private company then gets rich off of the stuff that we paid for. That's something we're going to be talking about on upcoming shows anyway. So that's the rabbit hole I went down when I was supposed to be looking at finance.
So I'm a poor person. And you're a poor person.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah, technically.
Financially speaking.
That's the thing, is I never thought of myself as poor. I don't have any money, but
I
never thought of myself as poor. Poor were always those other people over there for some reason.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think
that's not uncommon either.
It's not uncommon. I think a lot of people in the U.S. think that they're probably middle class. In fact, I read a really great Business Insider article that I shared with you. I'll have to find that earlier this week, preparing for this show, that was talking about what is the middle class, where is the middle class, who is in it, how big is it, and what's happening to it. We have a lot of financial problems in this country, massive wealth inequality, and a lot of that comes down to psychological wealth inequalities, where a lot of poor people in the U.S. think that they are in the middle class, and a lot of hyper wealthy people, not the 1%, but like the 20%, think that they're probably middle class too.
Yeah.
And both of those groups are what's allowing politicians to manipulate people into, say, being mad at immigrants taking jobs and thinking that those are the people that are, or people who are like, kids just don't want to work anymore these days, or people who are like, we need a $15 an hour minimum wage. Why can't businesses just offer a living minimum wage? And it's like, well, because that dry cleaner is also laboring under financial structures. If you want to think of it, that dry cleaner also, this building that houses a dry cleaning business cannot get minimum wage in the spheres that it needs to operate in.
Right.
It has massively engorged costs of operation, taxes and fees that are unnecessary, costs of production, companies that sell them the products that they use to clean the clothes that are getting a massive profit margin on those products rather than just a fair profit margin, you know, like free market stuff. But it's not just, well, let's just slap all of the small businesses with a $15 an hour minimum wage. We can't just have a one-size-fits-all solution, unfortunately, because then we'll just be left with megacorps providing all the jobs, and all the small businesses will go. They'll all go.
So,
but anyway,
Yes.
Psychologically, we're all being embattled against each other because the upper middle class thinks it's middle class and the poverty class thinks it's middle class. And if you want to know whether you're middle class or not, I'll share a link in the comments. There is a calculator where you can put in how much you make in a year before taxes, how many people are in your household, what your level of education is, and what state you live in. And it shows you where you land in poverty class or middle class or upper class in your state. And then you can compare that to other people in those demographics based on census data and kind of get a perspective. Because my sister, for instance, I was talking with her. She lives in Virginia. Her husband's in real estate. She's a nurse. And I was talking about how the U.S. is largely poverty class, like the bottom of the pyramid. And she's like, oh, that's not true. And I was like, well, but poverty class in San Francisco is like under $170,000 a year.
Something like that, 140 somewhere.
Yeah,
in there.
It's gone up.
Oh,
yeah, when I looked it up. So it's like if you are making less than $170,000 a year in San Francisco, you're in the poverty class.
How can you be in the poverty class? They have an iPhone and a refrigerator.
I saw a meme today that was the beautiful, idyllic British countryside scenery, and it was like, we are all but peasants with Wi-Fi.
Yeah. So at the beginning of the week, I posted a thread so if you follow some of the things on Twitter, there's this thing called Thread Reader, where a Twitter tweet will go generate a bunch of stuff. And so there's a thing called Thread Reader where they squeeze all that into
They put all the responses in one spot, so it's easier to read.
So I'm going to share what I shared, and then I'm going to qualify what I shared.
Okay.
Because I hadn't read it when I shared it. And so I didn't want to delete it.
You thought it was exciting.
I didn't want to delete it because I think there's some good information there.
Right.
I also don't necessarily agree with all the information.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens when you walk around out in the Borderlands. There are some people who have their nose in corners that I don't, and they come up with information that I haven't come up with, and I think it's really relevant. And then they start talking about Nazis or communists or something, and I'm like, oh. So, and I've also been in the conspiracy realm for a number of years, and I know oftentimes when good, pertinent information comes out and it starts to get traction, reptilians from other dimensions are then painted over the information of the assassination of John F. Kennedy or something. So
we should be looking at this information, but we're not going to because it involves aliens or ghosts or
so
Obama's birth certificate.
This is a thread. I posted a copy of the thread in the comments on the Facebook page, and then underneath it, I'm going to post a copy of Post-Orthodoxy correspondent Mark French, his response to the thread that we posted, which I really appreciated, and it was way over my head.
And if any of you technophiles out there know an easier way for us to share links with our listening audience that's accessible to everybody listening on all the platforms, I don't know how to do it, but all of the links are clickable on Facebook.
Okay, so
we're going to have to move platforms soon.
We're working towards it. So the thread reader, the thread was from somebody named Cultural Husbandry. I don't know who they are. They could be Nazis. I have no idea. But this is the thread, and this is the headline that grabbed me. BlackRock is buying every single family house they can find, paying 20 to 50% above asking price and outbidding normal home buyers. Why are corporations, pension funds, and property investment groups buying entire neighborhoods out from under the middle class? And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because BlackRock, Vanguard, there's a few of these investment groups. Mm-hmm. I heard the stories all spring here in Butte. People in black cars showing up saying, how much did you pay for your house? I'll double it.
Just give it to me.
I have friends of mine that are electricians, and they're saying, yes, people are just buying houses on the phone and then having me go look and see if they have electricity or if it has wiring or if I need to put wiring in it.
Yeah, they don't care. They're just going to have that property.
They're going to have that property. Mm-hmm. So this thread goes on further. It says, let's take a look. Homes are popping up on the MLS and going under contract within a few hours. BlackRock, among others, are buying up thousands of new homes and entire neighborhoods. So who is BlackRock?
Yeah.
This leads into our cryptocurrency conversation, by the way.
Mm.
Who is BlackRock? Only the world's largest asset manager and the leading proponent of the Great Reset, which we have covered ongoingly on our radio program in season 1, and we've touched on in season 2, and we need to go back and do
another talk about it.
Another talk about the Great Reset.
You can look up the Great Reset. We have the internet now.
The Great Reset, which is the plan by the World Economic Forum, which you've heard of Davos, which is where Greta Thunberg goes and yells at rich people. So BlackRock is looking to redistribute, get this, $120 trillion, the entire wealth of the world's middle class and poor combined several times over. As an example, a 124 new home neighborhood was bought in its entirety in Texas. Average Americans were outbid to a tune of $32 million. Homes sold at an average of 20% above the listing. Now the entire neighborhood is made up of SFRs. What are SFRs? Single-family rentals. They used to call them single-family residences. But now it's single-family rentals.
So one of those massive suburbs that they just like build in a summer, and then everybody gets to go in, look at the model house and
cannot
decide
buy,
if you
now
want.
go rent.
Oh my God.
So this guy goes on further, or this person. I don't know who Cultural Husbandry is. Again, I do not endorse them. I don't know what party they belong to. I don't even know if they're human. They could be. They could just be an agent of BlackRock. I have no idea. So your potential to middle class homeowner is positioned to be now your potential lower to middle class homeowner is positioned to be a permanent renter. This matters because for the lower and middle class, owning a home is the most major part of any financial success and future upward mobility. This is wealth redistribution, and it ain't rich people's wealth that's getting redistributed. It's normal American middle class, salt of the earth, wealth heading into the hands of the world's most powerful entities and individuals. The traditional financial vehicle is gone forever. So now they're getting pretty hyperbolic. This is where I'm going to leave the article because it starts getting into communism and Black Lives Matter. And I don't think that's really relevant to the original.
We can all talk about what's going on financially and in the housing market without making it political.
Without making it, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, I should say, when I say making it political, I mean
making it red or blue.
Attaching an emotionally driven political statement to, and that's why we can't have nice things. Grr Biden, grr Trump, grr Obama, whatever you want to grr. Like that is what I mean by making it political. I think there are definitely political reasons, global and local, for why this is happening to our homes.
Right.
Damon says, I haven't read the article, but I suspect the same thing is happening. The wealthy know the inflation is going to take away from their value. Rental income on homes is seen as a safe investment.
Right, exactly. So I thought that was an interesting story. If you've been paying any attention to what's going on, we're trying to buy the building that we're in. We're in the process of buying this building because we feel like if we don't buy it now, we're doomed forever.
We've been trying to buy it since 2019.
Yeah. But we're also artists, blah, blah, blah. So if you're trying, I know I've heard horror stories. You can't find a rental in town in Butte, Montana. Butte, Montana has usually had from what I understood, and I don't know if this is an actual number or if this was hyperbolic, but we had a 30% occupancy rate in Uptown Butte because there's so many derelict buildings.
Yes. That makes sense.
It may be a 4-story building, but they're only using the first floor.
We had a city that could house over 130,000 people. And then when the mines shut down, there was a diaspora, and Butte went into a massive depression. And so now the suburbs are populated, but Uptown Butte, the historic district with all these massive buildings and boarding houses and apartments and things like that, is not as like we could house tons of people. The apartments just aren't built.
Right. So those buildings are getting sold, and maybe they'll get developed.
Evil Zaid says, hello.
Hello.
Where are you listening from, Evil Zaid, on Twitch?
So that's what started me down this rabbit hole of what's going on with money this week. While were on our trip, we encountered some folks who, including, we caught up with a friend of the show who's going to be on our show Thursday. And we met them in a coffee house at an undisclosed location somewhere in Illinois and talked about cryptocurrency. You want to talk about cryptocurrency now?
Is that a segue? Was that a say? Like,
yeah. Well, this is all like, so what do you do, right? So like for a long time, I've been, because I used to be a conspiracy theorist before I became a conspiracy analyst. When you start going down the rabbit holes of conspiracy, you get to the Federal Reserve. Often you come to the Federal Reserve, which a lot of people think, well, that's just the government's bank or something. Well, yes. It's not.
It's actually not a government institution. I did not know this.
It's not a government.
You'd think if it says federal, like federal government, but no.
It's not. It's not a federal institution, even though it's called the Federal Reserve. Right. It was created in 1913 by the Federal Reserve Act of 1913,
which was a government thing.
Yeah, it was. The Senate, the House, and Senate voted it in because this is 1913. This is before we had the stock market crash and all that business.
Okay.
So there was massive instability happening at the time, and they thought they were going to smooth it out a little bit. It's all about gold.
So
what happened with the petrodollar was also another wave of this, like, well, maybe we don't need to tie our money to an actual object like gold. So
you just have money going around.
And that's what is called a fiat currency, where the value of the currency is reliant upon confidence in the currency.
How people feel about that.
That's just magic. So, like, gold was a solid thing. You say, if I have these many pieces of paper, I can get this much gold.
Yes.
You can't, these many pieces of paper don't get you it's not tied to an amount of gold.
Yeah.
Gold goes up and down. So they detached.
Well, it's the dollar goes up and down.
Well, the value of gold goes up and down. Somebody discovers a whole bunch of gold, suddenly the price drops because there's more in the market. So the idea was to like smooth it out. Yeah, go ahead.
The 1913 Federal Reserve Act created the Federal Reserve, known simply as the Fed. It was implemented to establish economic stability in the U.S. by introducing a central bank to oversee monetary policy.
Right.
Thanks, Woodrow Wilson.
Yeah, so that is an entire rabbit hole show that we can go down, just talking about the Federal Reserve, what it is, what people think it is, what conspiracy theorists say it is. And trying to tease out all those things is not an easy task.
Yeah. So dollars. One of the things that has been a big part of my shift from thinking, I guess, rich dad, poor dad, my shift from always worrying about having enough money is shifting my consciousness and my intention from having money to conducting money.
Currency.
It's currency, like electrical currency, which does not sit, it goes through in large or small amounts in order to cause change to happen. A small amount of currency is conducted to an outlet to power my phone over the course of the night, and a large amount of currency is being conducted in this room to power all of this equipment.
Right, so if you go get a job at Burger King...
But it's not sitting here in this room.
You're tapping your life energy into the plug of Burger King, and you're getting a current trickle of some stuff that helps you pay some of your bills.
Some currency comes through me from Burger King and to my landlord.
Right.
Or to the grocery store.
So how do you up your ability? What fuse do you have to put in your brain to allow a larger flow of currency to go through you?
To up my psychological ability to conduct more currency for greater change in my environment.
It's a lot of black magic here. The idea of the fiat currency it's just black magic. Like when you go to the carnival and you give them dollars and they give you little tickets.
Right.
That is the currency of that place.
Only that place.
You can't use it anywhere else. And so, so I guess maybe you could sell those tickets to other people.
You could scalp
and
them.
Get the same amount out or whatever. But that's what basically the U.S. dollar is you can use it in this place.
Right.
If you want to go use it in South Africa, you get a bigger bang for your buck because the rand is really low.
Yeah.
So you trade your carnival tickets in America for carnival tickets in South Africa, and you get
a lot of carnival tickets. Or if you go to Scotland, you get way fewer carnival tickets in Scotland.
So you don't get to ride the fun rides.
Not as many rides in Scotland.
Right. So this is what the banks do, and these different currencies do, is they have these fluctuations. Now we're moving into a Star Trek level 4 one world currency. Mm-hmm. Right?
Are we?
I don't know.
I hated that idea as a kid. They tried to do the euro thing, which I was just like, that's dumb because all of these different countries have such beautiful monies. Their money is art. Our money isn't art. Yeah. But like other countries have like little see-through windows with iridescent seagulls flying across them. Right. Like other countries' money is so beautiful and recognize important members of that country, not just like presidents, like historical figures that came from that country or famous musicians. Like other countries' money is so pretty. I was really sad about the euro coming and sucking everything up. But with everything being digital, I never carry cash.
Right, you don't.
I don't. Like, so I can like think about the good old days where we got to hold beautiful pieces of paper in our hands and then go buy a sandwich with it. But really, honestly, barring the total technological apocalypse, we're going to keep moving into a more and more digital space, which means why not just have a global currency?
Well, it looks like we're moving.
It would put more power into the hands of the people, unfortunately.
So here's the generalized
unfortunately
idea
for the overlords
of cryptocurrency is that the U.S. dollar got tied to oil.
What does that mean?
Whenever we dropped off, whenever Nixon detached the gold standard from the dollar, like we had to have X amount of gold to print X amount of dollars.
Okay.
And he said, nah, we don't have to do that.
We could just print some more dollars.
So then that confidence made people, that lack of confidence of a solid thing caused a big upheaval all around the world. And then eventually the petrodollar emerged, which is like we can tie it to oil. So it's no longer gold, but it's oil. And so the U.S. made sure that as many of the oil trading companies were using the dollar to sell their oil, which bolstered the power of the dollar because look how much currency is going through the dollar. The oil going through the dollar bolstered the idea with the dollar, the confidence in the dollar. Because people need oil.
Yes.
And oil is being traded in dollars, so dollar has, and that's what happened with Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein wanted to go off the dollar, and then suddenly he was a terrorist, and we killed him.
I don't know what it means to go off the dollar, and I understand
He wanted to trade in dinar. Same thing with Gaddafi. Gaddafi wanted to take his nation's oil, make it the product of the nation, which the people benefit from, and said he created his own currency, which was gold, so it was tied to gold, and then he wanted to trade. And so whenever he sold, that bolstered the power of his currency.
So he was, let me break it down in really small terms. You're saying Gaddafi's country had oil.
Yes, has oil
that was from their country.
Yes.
Mined in their country.
Right.
Or whatever you call oil mining. And he said,
extracted.
If another country wants to buy oil from Sudan.
Not Sudan.
Or Iran. I don't know. Which country was it?
Gaddafi. No, I just drew a blank.
Iraq, Iran,
no,
Sudan,
no,
Afghanistan.
No.
Those are all the people we're bombing.
I know. Well, we killed him. Gaddafi.
Let me just.
I know.
Where was Gaddafi from?
I have a cold. Okay. Somebody's going to say it before I find it. Libya.
I've never even heard of us bombing Libya. Are we bombing Libya?
We didn't bomb Libya. We just killed him.
Okay, so Gaddafi lives in Libya, and he's like, my country is producing oil. If the U.S. wants to buy oil produced in Libya, the U.S. needs to go to an exchange and show up in Libya with Libyan money.
Right, which then gives, again, it's confidence in that currency.
But instead, what you're saying is the U.S. forced the story to be that the U.S. gets to show up in Libya with U.S. money and force Libya to take U.S. money for the oil.
Libya was doing that. They were selling it in dollars, and then Gaddafi was like, yeah, maybe not so much. I think we want, and there's various stories on Gaddafi. Some people say that he was a ruthless dictator and he was torturing his people. Other people are saying he was actually making sure every person got a car and an education and rent subsidies off of the oil subsidies that was coming from their country because they were born in that country where the oil was and they should share in the wealth of the country.
Right.
That was the general, that was what Gaddafi was also an acid head. He wrote a book called The Green Book, which was this sort of new vision of the world.
How's them apples, all y'all hippies?
So he was probably, what we call him, that he was perhaps a benevolent dictator, and some people say he wasn't benevolent. I guess it depends on who you were.
Right. So let's take this into a different situation. Say I want to go visit Scotland. If I want to go visit Scotland, well, let's make it England because I don't want to make everybody sad about how Scotland's being forced to use pounds. So say I want to go visit England.
Yeah.
If I want to go to England, I can have a Bank of America debit card and buy things in England, and my bank will do the exchange for me. But prior to having like a nice global debit card, where I would have to get off the airplane, go into the city, go to a building, give them my U.S. dollars,
pay them and there's an
and
exchange
then
rate.
That building would get some money from me for giving me back pounds and euros.
Right.
And I would get a little bit of euros because I want to go to some museums, and I would get some pounds because I want to buy some snacks at some shops, right?
Right.
And so I would have then British money to buy things from Britain with.
Right.
And what you're saying is the parallel version is instead that I show up to England and I force British shop owners to sell me things in exchange for dollars, in exchange for U.S. dollars.
Yeah, some people will still take U.S. dollars.
Some people will, but for the sake of the story, like I'm instead of exchanging money, which I'm beginning to understand how that breathes life into this currency. Pounds continue to have life as a form of money because people exchange into them and use them, and they are in circulation. But for instance, because the U.S. would not exchange dollars into dinar to pay to Saddam in Sudan for his oil. Is that the right country?
Libya.
Saddam.
Oh, Iraq.
So because the U.S. is like, no, we're not, is that Iraqi dinar?
In the dinar?
I think that's Iraq. So because the U.S. was like, no, we're not going to pay you in your currency for your product, the dinar kind of sat on a shelf and was sad because it wasn't growing and being used.
Right.
It forces Iraq and Iraqi shoppers and Iraqi businesses to use dollars because dollars are in circulation. Is that kind of what you're saying?
That's
by like the dollar?
So the idea is, as long as one of the largest resources on the planet that everybody is reliant upon, which is oil at this moment,
okay,
as long as that is the thing that people need, and it's traded in dollars, there's confidence in the dollar.
But if, say, we had to actually do a fair exchange to every country's currency in order to buy their oil, then the dollar would be less robust because it wouldn't be circulating in Iraq and Sudan and Libya. Those
I don't
currencies.
know if it's circulating.
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to.
This is really complex.
I know. What do you?
Don't yell at me. So if you look at countries that we put sanctions on, such as Iraq or Iran. So we put sanctions on Iran.
What does that mean?
That means that as long as we're gangsters, let's just say we're gangsters, and we don't like Iran, and anybody who does business with Iran, we're going to have a problem with. You don't want to piss off the U.S., so you don't do business with Iran, so they can't sell things to Iran or buy things from Iran.
So
they don't have an export-import business.
This is a legal thing that we did?
Yes. So that's happening with Iran right now. So what happens is Iran has oil, but they don't want to sell it in dollars. So they are finding. So this just happened in February or something. There was a tanker full of Iranian oil that the U.S. seized because they said, no, it's from Qatar or something. Said, no, it's Iranian oil. They seized it, took it to Houston, and then sold it. The U.S. government stole this tanker of oil because it's Iranian oil and nobody's supposed to be buying it. So we stole it. Somebody pumped it, put it in a ship. We stole it and sold it. We're kind of a gangster nation.
So sanctions.
Sanctions.
It sounds nice when you say we've put some sanctions on Iran because they're bad guys.
That means don't do business with them or we're going to spank you too. That's what a sanction is.
So a sanction is country A, or actually like country triple Z, because we're one of the babiest countries on the planet.
Yeah.
So baby country tells other country, no, you can't sell your stuff to other countries. You can only sell your stuff to us.
It's where you have these global alliances.
And then we call it a sanction, and it sounds okay.
Yeah.
Does the UN know about this? Isn't that what the
yeah.
UN is for? Is like not letting countries be bullies?
No.
I'm ashamed.
No. That was the idea. That was the idea of the UN. But you know how gangs work.
Damon is wondering if the U.S. is forcing other countries to sell oil in U.S. dollars in order to make the U.S. dollar a world currency.
Yes. That's the deal that we swung with Saudi Arabia. That's why we go and spank Saddam or we go and spank Gaddafi, but we don't spank Saudi Arabia for not letting women to drive and killing gays, is because we made a deal with them a long time ago where we said, as long as you trade in dollars, we're not going to mess with you.
So the U.S. is supposedly invading countries all over the world to spread democracy, but we're not going to spread democracy to Saudi Arabia.
No, because they're the biggest oil producer and they use the dollar.
The stories are getting all kind of
So
choked in my throat right now.
We're never going to mess with Saudi Arabia as long as they are selling oil in dollars.
Wow. So I'm guessing if we ever hear about a Saudi Arabian dictator being overthrown by U.S. democracy workers, that we'll find out that dictator was probably trying to get Saudi Arabia off the U.S. dollar.
Or to nationalize the oil.
Yeah.
To
make the oil profits actually benefit the people of that country.
Of the country instead of some private corporation. Anyway.
So what does all of this have to do with?
This is the muddy, oily, dark part of the U.S. dollar.
Right.
Cryptocurrency is its own story.
It lives in the digital realm.
And is threatening the central bank, the Federal Reserve, the large
Is
old
cryptocurrency
school.
threatening the stock market?
You're out of my league.
Like
at that
in my
point.
mind, what I've been learning is kind of like cryptocurrency is kind of like the stock market for poor kids. And I know that's a really crass way of putting it.
You can buy penny stocks. I mean, it's the same thing in the sense that you
penny
can
stocks.
You can buy stocks for a penny, and maybe it goes up and you get rich, right?
Right.
So it's working. I think this is why we have a guest on Thursday who knows more than we do. This idea of cryptocurrency not being tied to anything solid other than math.
Right, and an algorithm. For instance, so cryptocurrency is a new kind of currency. There are several kinds of cryptocurrency, and they all have fancy and interesting names. Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Dogecoin, SafeMoon. These are all the big ones I've been hearing about. So these are all different kinds of, and they all have different rules for how they work in the digital sphere. Bitcoin, for instance, like the way that one of these things comes into existence, as far as I know, and Damon can correct me, is that someone makes a complex digital math problem in the brains of the digital world, in the computer. They make a complex digital math problem, and that math problem or algorithm spits out cryptocurrency based on certain rules. Much like if you think back to the early days of the computer, like C+ programming and the little command box, So like I barely vaguely remember this. You open up your computer and instead of a beautiful desktop background and a bunch of buttons, you have this black box. And if you type words into that black box, things will happen on your computer. And it was much more like actually being involved in the guts of the computer. I don't know if you ever had a computer that did that, but like the command prompt box.
Sure.
It was really cool. It felt like you were actually manipulating the computer to do something. But it was basically like, if I type in this rule, a screen opens up. If I type in this rule, the screen becomes smaller. If I type in this rule, I'm allowed to now start typing in that screen to take a note for class or something like that. And so the Bitcoin is kind of like that vaguely, in that it's based on a series of rules. When such and such happens, more Bitcoins are created. When so many Bitcoins exist, this happens. And it can only, it's self-destructing. This tape will self-destruct in 30 seconds. Not that the existence of the Bitcoins will self-destruct, but that the algorithm is not going to go in perpetuity. The algorithm is designed so that when a certain thing happens, it stops making Bitcoin, and then there will only be so many Bitcoins in existence until the end of time.
So, yes.
Not all of them are like that, though. Some of them just keep, their math problem tells them to keep producing cryptocurrencies, whatever they are, based on a variety of different rules over time.
So we're going to learn about things from our guest on Thursday, like FUD. Fear,
which is
uncertainty, doubt.
A great term to have on this show.
Fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yeah.
And so the idea
FUD levels
is that the old money, the old banks, the old currency wants to keep people away from crypto. And so you need to keep making it scary.
Right.
Is that right?
Yeah, fear, uncertainty, doubt. So this is something.
This is a new acronym that's new to me this couple of weeks.
It's a new acronym that has come out of the crypto community. So one of the things that's been most exhausting for me about studying this, and it's a compassion creating experience for me, because Dark and I are constantly telling people, like, why don't you just like learn new stuff and change your mind? And it's like, because it's fucking hard. Because there are all these terms like, we're feeling bullish today, and I'm like, oh my god, what does that even mean? And all the crypto people are saying, and it basically, I think, means we're feeling really confident and excited about this thing. And it's tied to, we're literally making new language, and that's really exciting. I love it. I love etymology. It's tied to the bear market versus the bull market. The bear market is when things are crashing and depressing, and the bull market are when spring has come again and everything's really wonderful. And so feeling bullish is like we're all hot for crypto, basically. It's like the crypto slang for we're hot for crypto.
Right.
You know? And so learning all these new terms. What was your question?
What's crypto?
No.
My question was, the reason we went down the oil rabbit hole and the idea of the Federal Reserve is that if you go into
FUD.
FUD. Okay.
Let me go back to the FUD thing.
Very good.
So we're in the internet age. Like, we can know things now.
You could know things.
We can know things now, and yet we still have vast millions of the global population who grew up pre-internet and don't have it in their brain that you could just know anything now. So lots and lots of them, lots and lots of them don't think I should go Google that.
Well, because it's not as easy as just Google the Federal Reserve and see if you can get the full story.
And lots of those people they have not grown up with the mindset of being filmed all the time, being recorded all the time, having a digital paper trail of all of your actions and behavior. So where FUD is coming from is the global players, the power players, the financial entities telling the global governments how to run things are spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They're spreading a story, just like a muckraker in the ye olden days.
Why would they do that?
Would dig up a little story about how this politician kissed Susie behind the bleachers in high school, so you should definitely not let him run for school superintendent now that he's 45. Because none of the rest of us kissed Susie behind the bleachers in high school. Only this guy, So, like, that's muckraking. But now, now we can actually...
Everybody is...
Look at a
filmed kissing Susie.
We can look at a news article and figure out who's paying that paper, and figure out what the interests of the people paying that paper have, and figure out who they're connected to, and then we can go and look up the data that the article is trying to spread around and figure out if it's the actual data. Like, scare tactics are being used on us that we have the ability to defend ourselves from by seeking out knowledge.
Not if you're poor and you don't have time to do the research.
That's very true. And not if you're exhausted of the fight and you don't want to do the research. I just want to find a source I can trust.
Rachel Maddow, please tell me how the world works.
So fear, uncertainty, and doubt or FUD is a nice one-stop shop term that Dark and I have not had in our lexicon before, because it was created by the crypto community, but it's been happening for a long time.
in various ways.
Like I was,
it's the way you manipulate confidence.
Manipulating confidence to enact change. So one of my favorite examples of this
for personal gain
was
or corporate gain.
In 2020. I was joined political groups on Facebook for the first time ever in like 2018, 19, and 20 while we were doing these shows. And in 2020, I had in my news feed these Blue Revolution, all these Democratic Facebook groups full of people who loved Bernie and wanted Bernie to be president.
Right.
Bernie specific groups, blue groups that were mostly pro-Bernie but would leave room for Elizabeth Warren lovers and things like that. But it was basically the tide was all of these voters are going to go vote for Bernie in the election. And then somebody started sowing FUD. And I don't know if it was just people being gun shy that we could actually have change, or if it was
you can't really have
like
nice
bad
things.
operatives. Maybe it was people who were paid by
The
entities,
DNC.
The DNC to sow FUD. But what happened was I watched this happen over like the course of a week, is all these people who were so excited to pound the pavement and explain to everybody that Bernie's not trying to tax you 70% of your income and get everybody to the polls and get everybody registered, started saying, but wait, what if not enough of us vote for Bernie?
In the primary.
In the primary.
That's where you should vote your conscience.
No. They were saying, what if not enough of us vote for Bernie in the election? If it's Bernie versus Trump, there might not be enough of us to vote for Bernie. So
But they said that before the primary.
So we better not vote for him in the primary.
Yeah.
Because we really need a candidate that people will choose over Trump.
That was quite a coup.
It was nuts. I watched people, it was just like gore dribbling down all of these Facebook feeds in front of my face every morning as I check with my coffee. I'm just like, oh my God, it just bled. Suddenly, everybody was talking each other out of voting for Bernie in case not enough people voted for Bernie.
It worked.
It worked. That's FUD.
Yeah, that's FUD in a political sense.
It's been happening long before the crypto world, but I'm really happy to have a turn for it now.
Yeah. So how does it apply to crypto?
So
we can have our guest on Thursday maybe explain it further.
Yeah. Is crypto a fiat currency?
Fiat currency is
just
based on
faith.
faith, right? This
So
is
I
based
think
on an algorithm.
Some cryptos are fiat and some are not.
I think fear and uncertainty and doubt can move things around,
Yeah.
whether you want to invest there or not invest there.
Right.
But the algorithm or the particular white paper of that cryptocurrency tells you what it is and what it's doing.
Right.
So
like big businesses are starting to sniff around the crypto world and they're starting to get excited. They're
way into
yeah.
it.
They're way, yeah. So it's scary. We don't have billboards on the side of the road talking about crypto yet, but it's going to get mainstream really soon. And for me, I'm starting to realize that if this isn't something that I jump on board with now, I'm going to feel really stupid in 5 years because I feel stupid I didn't do it 5 years ago from the numbers that we're looking at right now.
So
it's not going away.
It's not
barring total technological apocalypse. Like this is something I try to tell people who are like, kids don't know how to address an envelope anymore. I'm like, we don't need to do envelopes because we have email and phone calls. Like if people need to know how to address if the world collapses to the point that we don't have a device to connect with the person that we need, we're going to need to know how to make soap. Not address envelopes. So barring total technological apocalypse, cryptocurrency is not going away. There have been so many people other than just individuals investing in cryptocurrencies. It's not going to suddenly not be there or not be a place where people are storing their wealth. And this is where I'm learning to think of like a rich person and not think like a poor person. Because money has always been in my mind something that I need to have so that I can dole it out, and hopefully some of the doling goes to something that I care about. I need to possess it, right? Some of it goes to rent, some of it might go to getting an ice cream or going to the fair or whatever you want to talk about. But storing wealth or assets, which has always just made me angry on the concept, because I'm like, I don't actually have any money if I have a boat.
Yeah, okay.
But you do. You have wealth, and that's getting away from letting literal dollars in your mind have sway, have more power, because it's breaking me. It's helping me understand dollars as a fiat currency, because dollars are a form of wealth. A boat is also a form of wealth. if you have a boat, you can take out a second mortgage against your boat. If you have a house, you know, like if you have wealth, you can create more wealth and you can move your wealth around. There, you know, like people could do this with credit cards. You pay off a certain credit card at a certain time and then use that balance to go and pay off a different credit card at a different time to avoid this fee and put it in a higher interest account for a little while and then withdraw it and put it in another. And you're just doinking around with numbers in a cloud. It's not money I have to have in my possession to survive. It's letting it just go live somewhere else. It's a concept. It's a currency. It's wealth somewhere else. And cryptocurrency is a way to store wealth, is what I'm learning.
Okay.
It's a storage of asset, and it's a trustworthy asset.
You're saying it's more trustworthy than the U.S. dollar?
Yeah. And
All right.
that's why FUD is being introduced.
Because no, the U.S. dollar is your only. How does that work?
Yeah. So what you can do, and something that I'm excited to do eventually in the future, is you can have a storage of wealth. Say you have $100,000 invested in a cryptocurrency, which means it's just sitting there gaining interest, which is great because my bank account is like 1.7% interest on my savings. But if I have my money in a crypto account, I can be earning as much as like 9% interest.
So why would you have your money in a savings account?
In a bank. And when you could have it sitting in a crypto account earning 9% interest.
Maybe because you have
compound.
Maybe because you have to learn a whole new thing to even begin the process.
Yes, it's hard. Which is why we're having a guest in on Thursday to help try and explain it for people.
Yeah, you're entering into a whole other arena.
I have to learn terms to know how to Google the things that I'm trying to figure out. It's nuts.
You just don't go buy a Bitcoin.
No, you don't go buy a Bitcoin, I've found out.
Well, especially now that it's like $35,000.
Right.
For one.
I, Ainsley, do not just go buy a Bitcoin. But I also don't even go buy like you can break them up like penny farthings in the olden days where they would take a penny and crack it, a hay penny, they'd crack it in half, you have a hay penny, or they crack it into eighths, and that would be your, I can't remember, penny farthing, I don't know, remember what it was called. But they used to break up in Britain when things were really
tight.
Yeah, they would break up pennies into like pizza wedges.
Right.
So you can do that with your coins, like your digital.
Right.
You know, I can own part of a Bitcoin, and it will appreciate over time and depreciate over time. And gradually, the cycle that we're seeing is that it's going up.
Well, I'm interested in learning about how to do all this stuff because I like problem solving. I like puzzles, and it feels like it's a whole other arena.
Mm-hmm. It's a new way to think about currency and
a
wealth.
New way to think about currency, but it's also that kind of thing where how much am I willing to learn to enter into the thing? It feels like there's like a demon at the gate, which is like, oh, you want to get into crypto? Come on in, and then you have to
wade through all the YouTube videos.
Is that what it is? There's so much terminology. You can't just buy a Bitcoin. You have to convert your money into a what?
So,
like,
in order,
we're not going to cover it on this show.
I can walk through it though.
Okay, walk through because it helps for people to hear this more than once.
Right,
it helps me to hear it more than once.
So, I have no idea how I invest in stocks.
Let's say we want to take $100 and we want to put $100 into. I have $100 right now, and I want to have $100 worth of Bitcoin. What do I do?
You have to get that $100 into an approved bank, like a nice, like a bank, not like it has to be a real bank, right?
Okay.
FCU or whatever.
Not Fred's bank.
Not like a coffee can. So you have to
Okay.
put their $100 into a bank.
Okay.
It has to be attached to your government legal identity.
Okay.
You have to sign up for an account on one of these crypto things online. I think they're all called wallets. They're not all. There's like wallets, exchanges, swaps. Like there are all these different spaces where you can do things with your crypto.
So I take my $100.
You put it in a bank.
Put it in a bank.
Mm-hmm. And then you go online.
Let's just say a wallet. It goes into a wallet.
Oh, it doesn't just go into a wallet, baby.
Okay.
You have to create an account on, say, Coinbase, Crypto.com, BlockFi, one of these spaces. So you create an account. They verify your identity. They want where you live, your social, your driver's license. They're verifying that you are you. So that's good. And then you have to attach your real world physical bank to your crypto bank via like your account and routing number. Some of them let you do it with a debit card, like you're buying, as if you're buying something. And then all of this takes time. like sometimes hours, sometimes days.
Oh.
So
I'm not going to be able to just buy a Bitcoin today.
you can't just go fucking do it.
Okay.
You have to wait for the approval processes to go through.
Okay.
So then once they're attached, then you transfer money from your physical real world bank into your crypto bank. So now your crypto bank has $100 in it.
My crypto bank.
Yes. It's holding some US dollars. I'm just using the term crypto bank because I don't know what the blanket term is for all of these services.
Okay.
There are several kinds. So your crypto bank now has $100 in it. And then you can use the $100 that you have transferred in, or if you were living in Europe, it would be your 100 euros, or you're like 35 euros. No,
Yeah.
it's the other way.
Oh, right.
35 euros.
Yeah.
So your 100, you can use that in this service that you've signed up for to buy Bitcoin.
Okay.
Or to buy Ethereum, or to buy Dogecoin.
Okay.
Then you are in possession of some Bitcoin.
Wait, how do I then buy it? You just go to
You just on
Bitcoin.
So
and
say you
I
chose
want some?
say you chose BlockFi, or
Okay.
say you chose BlockFi. You're like you're in your BlockFi account.
Wait. You got to go with me here.
Okay.
Bank, $100 goes
Yep.
in the bank, goes into a wallet.
Or crypto bank, whatever.
crypto
you
bank.
transfer it from your physical bank to your online
Then
digital.
How does that become a Bitcoin?
You buy it.
From who?
Well,
From where? How do I buy?
I don't know where Bitcoins
do
live.
I go to bitcoin.com and I want $100?
I think it
worth,
has
please?
something to do with a blockchain.
Yeah.
Bitcoin lives, I think, and this is part of me not understanding blockchains.
This is why we have guests on our shows.
But Bitcoin lives on a blockchain, I think.
Okay.
This is me just guessing, and Damon, you can tell me on Thursday if I'm
Right, we're going to look right now. Wait for a comment.
So a blockchain is sort of like a digital storage facility, and Bitcoin lives in its own particular digital storage facility blockchain, a specific blockchain that exists for Bitcoin to live in, and approved services access the
Like
storage
Tesla,
facility.
right? So like
like BlockFi.
If I want to buy a car from Tesla,
Yeah.
they're accepting Bitcoins again.
They are?
He stopped doing Bitcoins because he said it's too much of an energy suck and we got to be nice
Oh,
to
no, the environment.
And then he's like, oh, they're doing better now. So now you can do it again. That's like 2 weeks or something. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if that was FUD.
Right.
I don't know if that was him doing something. I don't know what happened there. But suddenly he's like, they decided to clean up their act. So now you can buy a car with Bitcoin. So let's say I have enough money in my
in your Bitcoin bank, your crypto bank,
that I can just
so you can get a card.
I can get a card and go to Tesla and say, here, take X amount of things.
Take some of my Bitcoins, and then
drive out with a Tesla.
And then Elon Musk has some of your Bitcoin, and he's never going to give it back to you. They're just gonna store wealth in this crypto and borrow against it and use it to create more wealth in perpetuity.
It all sounds like magic.
Yeah. I think the US dollar is all magic, but we all pretend that it's not magic, so it's fine.
David Taylor said, but once you have gone through this process once, it does go faster after that because the channels have all been established.
Yes. With each new bank.
This is what I mean by the demon at the gate. This is the idea, like, I'm just going to go get some Bitcoin. You're like,
it's taken me like a week and a half to even get this far.
Right. So we're going to take you on our journey. We're gonna have a hypothetical. What is for the sake of the show, $100?
Well, I think I'm going to actually. So I have Ethereum cryptocurrency that I have invested on BlockFi.
Okay.
Which is a service, a crypto bank service.
All right.
And I am opening up a crypto.com account to invest Bitcoin because they have really nice interest rates and low fees right now.
Okay.
And then I think I might have. What's my third one? I think I might get a Celsius wallet crypto account and do some investing on there for the sake of the show.
Okay.
So like some really easy to understand amounts, like $100.
And now it's worth how much this week?
Exactly. And talk about what's going up and down and blah, 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 blah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And then Thursday we'll have somebody that's been digging deep. We had a conversation, and then we threw out these fragments and bits from our conversations and the research that you've been doing. And on Thursday, Damon Taylor will be here and tell us what he's been discovering in his deep dive into the world of cryptocurrency.
And we are going to start our show on Thursday at 4 p.m. instead of 5 p.m. FYI.
Damon Taylor says there is a way to do it without all this, but it's more technical and difficult unless you know what you're doing, and less safe. But requires no ID verification.
Yeah, that's like
So that's like Silk Road business or something, right?
That's like being a computer coder. Like I'm a person that gets onto a computer and just uses word processor.
Right.
And then there are other people like my cousin Matt who gets onto a computer and cracks open the brain of the computer and shoves Linux in there and then uses coding to change and get the exact, like that's what Damon's talking about. Is like there is a way. So centralized banking. There's some ethical things in the crypto community where people are trying to get away from centralized banks,
right?
Trying to get away from some entity having possession of my funds and able to use my funds to invest and make money and change the world with my, a bank can have a massive amount of influence because it doesn't just have an Ainsley amount of money. It has all the citizens of Butte amount of money.
Well, look at the insurance companies. They take all your money and then they invest it in whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
And then you have to live in the world that they invest in.
Yeah, and you don't have any say. So all of these services like Crypto.com and BlockFi and Celsius, these are basically crypto banks. Just like a physical, they are they're a service that's storing your crypto for you and making it easier for you. You could have like a direct relationship with your crypto, but it'd be even more difficult, like being a computer coder. You have to go directly,
I want to run for political office and only accept donations of cryptocurrency.
Okay. Why?
Stay tuned.
Samantha Brown says, until we get money out of politics, then maybe.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because the Federal Reserve is not of the government, but the heads of the banks are appointed by your government, which you don't really elect because the corporations are electing them. That's kind of the thing that we keep talking about.
This is not conspiracy theory.
We don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery, and that gets you your representatives, and they choose who head the Federal Reserve.
And they choose what the U.S. does with its money.
Right.
We are not making this up. This is not a theory. This is not a conspiracy theory.
No, that phrase, we don't live in a democracy. We live in an oligarchy with unlimited political bribery. That's not some conspiracy nut. That's former President Jimmy Carter. That's his statement.
May he live forever.
He's now this big. You've seen that. He's just going to shrink down and then go through a wormhole somewhere, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that should be fun. It's 6:30. It's time to feed the dogs dinner.
Yeah, I know. They've been looking at us.
They've been checking it over the baby gate. We have a baby gate because of all of our beautiful equipment.
I really appreciate everybody who's been tuning in and participating. And I want to give a thank you and a shout out to Mark French, who's not only been watching our shows after the fact, but then making up to like hour-long videos. Responses to our shows. Which I really appreciate. And we have been sharing those on our Post-Orthodoxy Facebook page. By the way, some little plugs. If you don't know about us, you can find us on Facebook under Post-Orthodoxy. That is our Facebook page. If you go to YouTube and you put in Post-Orthodoxy in YouTube, it doesn't have an address yet, but if you find us, you can follow us. And if you can follow us, then after we get 100 or so, we can have our own channel name on YouTube. So please help us out.
Yes,
that way.
Please. Help some friends. We just need 100 people. We know like 6,000 people on Facebook alone. I'm sure we can find 100 people to follow us on YouTube so we can make a custom URL for our YouTube page.
David said this is a good start to a talk. Looking forward to our chat on Thursday. So somebody with more information than us will come and tell us
4 p.m.
where
on
we were
Thursday.
right or wrong. Mm-hmm. And Mark French did make a response when we said we were going to have a show talking about crypto. He posted a video, which is on the Post-Orthodoxy Facebook page.
Yeah.
Giving his response to why he thinks maybe crypto isn't as shiny as some people do.
Yeah, and Damon's going to be looking into
Damon looked at that
because those are very common arguments.
Right. Damon looked at the response to crypto, and he's going to be addressing maybe not all of those because this is a very complex thing. He's going to be addressing some of the points made in that video, and this is going to be an ongoing discussion on Post-Orthodoxy. We do Post-Orthodoxy religion, Post-Orthodoxy science, Post-Orthodoxy politics, Post-Orthodoxy... post-Orthodox economics.
Yes.
We're moving into the
Hopefully
fringe
new
of
realms.
economics.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a regular segment on our show talking about, and we're going to invest a little bit of money and see where it goes, and then you can watch and see how it went.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into the show.
Yeah, you guys. Oh, yeah, that's me. I have to go and push the buttons now.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. See you on Thursday at 4 p.m. Tell your friends.